agenda item 6, to receive report on construction progress at Charter Oak Elementary.
We have from W.L. McNatt, Charles Wash, and our architect Sean Willis to discuss where we are with the project. And we've been meeting every other week since the project got going full blast, and wanted to have an opportunity for the board members to hear from their contractor about some of the challenges that we face and what the projection looks like going forward, because we all know that there's no way we can make the transition to neighborhood schools in the middle of a school year. And so that makes, coupled with the challenges we've had with weather and some other items, makes it critical that we are all informed of the progress of the construction project and where our kids are going to attend next year. Charles?
Pardon me. Okay. Delay-wise, we've had several delays that some foreseeable, some not. Weather, we generally account for going off the ODOT standard, which allots either 2 or 3 days per month lost due to rain. So far, we should be in the 15-day range. And in all reality, this has been one of the wetter summers, and we're at 44. Nope, sorry, 47. My bad. So that right there, 30 days is a lot to attend to in the makeup time. And then regrettably, we used the new surveyor on this one, and nevertheless, he was incompetent apparently, and that put us back another 20 days or so. And that one's all on us, and we'll push like crazy to make up for that delay. But there was the process we had to go through that backed us off a little bit legal-wise. I can't just continue to work even though I've gotten the problem fixed and still have recourse to recoup what we've lost so far. All in told, I brought schedules for everyone if you'd like.
Oh, never mind.
Does everybody have one?
Yeah, do that long ago.
For those who've never seen one of these, forgive me, I don't want to jump over you here, but this gives us a baseline timeline of the large items. It's not going to have every little nitpick item that'll go into the building, but this will give us all of the baselines of the large tasks that will be critical are noted in red. Those things have to maintain their timeline for us to hit the end goal. Right now, as it sits, if we leave today and nothing else goes wrong, you have an end date of 8/17. Now in that date, I've accounted for our standard weather days that we would normally foresee, and I've thrown a little extra in there just to make sure. Right now, I've padded it about 15 extra days over what we normally would add in there, just anticipating a wetter than normal winter. If we go over that, there's no way we can make that start of school. Because right now, 8/21 is your start date.
Doug?
We haven't set a calendar date yet
Yeah,
for next year.
And you know, for the board members' benefit here, we have explored some different options of starting later next year. We're not, and there's negatives to that and positives to that, but we've drawn up some mock calendars. We have not convened the calendar committee because we are waiting on some of this information. But we have looked at a possible, we've even got one that's a post-Labor Day start, I think, don't we, Doug?
Tuesday after.
Yeah, and that's pretty old school for how school calendars are. And we know that we need to, for the benefit of families and childcare and all of the things involved there, we know that we need to come up with that in somewhat timely of a fashion. Generally, when do we approve the calendar, Doug, for the next year? Usually February?
Usually we take it to the board in February.
Yeah, so those are some things that we have looked at to try and give us some opportunity.
If everything went perfect, they closed on 8/17, how long would it take for furniture and if that, I mean, if let's just say we went there, could you walk us through how long it would take to get furniture, reefers, food service?
Food
After
service
that-
is all on us. It'll
Okay.
already be in the building.
How long after 8/17 could school start?
Yeah, and I think probably, I don't know, Cody, you've done this. That's one of the benefits of having Cody. He has opened new schools before.
It depends what we decide to do when that happens, but I have moved 15 to 25 schools in 2 or 3 days. After emptying the building in Memorial Weekend, the start of school, I've gone back in 2 or 3 days, put everything back together again. If you go that direction, depends on how we want to transition when we do that, but we can do it in a week's time.
One of the things that we spoke about this last week as a contingency, you know, from a practical standpoint, we've got to have furniture to open this building, and we can't just let it sit out in the rain or the sun or whatever the elements are while they're finishing the school. And so, Charles, you might talk about what we discussed there.
Sure. One of the largest footprints in the building is actually the safe room gymnasium. Our anticipation originally was not to have those panels on site until late November.
The panels for the walls and the roof.
They're architectural precast.
Yeah, the concrete panels.
Tilt it up, it goes up pretty quick.
Similar to how Goodwill is built.
Again, sorry, that's my thinking. We didn't anticipate having those till around Thanksgiving. Finally, something's gone our way, and they'll be on site Monday morning and be going in the air. So, with that space, the slab goes in after on those. The panel will actually set on the footing, which will be about a foot below the floor. So the floor gets poured after all of the panels are erected. But it's a large open space. Very simple finishes, paint some acoustical panels, throw some bleachers and goals in there. And now you have a space that in the end, if we need to, your furniture can come in earlier and be stored in that space. It'll be in the building, ready to go, drugged to the room when it's ready.
So typically what happens is, in this case, the state fire marshal has jurisdiction because it's in the county, so we have to get their permission. But typically, state fire marshals and local fire marshals, when your building has a sprinkler system or is up and running where they're comfortable with it, they'll issue what's called like a stocking permit. And they'll let you store materials, but they have to be in one space, controlled. You can't store them in the center of every classroom or spread them out. They want them in boxes, but they can be in the building. At that point, when you get to ordering the furniture close to the end, that can be climate controllable. Because they're going to have to sequence that phase in the building anyway. They can sequence that portion first because it is going to go up first.
What type of floor is going in the gym? Will the
Wood.
gym floor actually go down and then you bring in?
Yeah, we would be complete before you moved and stocked.
We can cover the floor.
Yeah.
No, that's not.
Padding, rolled cardboard wouldn't be a big issue.
But we can still do the tile floors after you give us back the building. Put finish on it, things like that, before you move into the classroom.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the VCT will all be down, ready to go. I know there's some luxury vinyl that doesn't require any finishing in a good part of the space.
In the hallways, yeah.
So you don't have a whole lot of waxing and finishing to do. So it should actually turn pretty fast from us completing to you being ready to move.
Do you mind just maybe for the benefit, what's out there on site now, foundations and?
Okay. The main bulk of the classrooms will be in the metal building and on the east end. Right now, those footings are dug, looking to try and pour them tomorrow afternoon, worst case scenario Monday. Once those are in and we get our underground plumbing in, that slab will go down and that building will go up. It'll go up quickly. Those don't take us a lot of time. So that opens up a big bulk of the work right there for the framing, and you'll start seeing rooms take shape really quickly. The center section of the building is all CMU masonry walls. So that's gonna take the bulk of the time creating the spaces right there. It's a little slower of a process, more susceptible to problems with cold weather. We can't go in and work during that time frame if it's below 35 degrees. We're limited there. That's just the nature of construction in the winter. We'll anticipate and make every provision we can, but I'd rather give you a quality product than cut a corner to try to make a little time up in the cold weather. It just doesn't. So there may be a few days you guys drive by. I don't know how often you all go by there, but there'll be days where you won't see a lot of guys there. It's just the nature of it. But by opening up that gym and the metal building and not being susceptible to the cold, it really won't hit us very hard. So I'm hoping those 15 days can be made up elsewhere if we don't lose that many for the winter weather.
So I'm sorry, we had 47 rain days, but you calculated 15. So
I calculated 15 for November, December, January, and February. Oh, I'm sorry, are you talking in the past so far?
Current to current.
Oh, the current, yeah.
So that's 32.
Yes.
You budgeted, and then you were a 20-day behind on survey, so that's a total of 52 days.
Yes.
So you're basically saying without any more delays, we can open on the 17th of August.
Without any significant ones, yes.
Are you willing to work weekends in order to?
Oh, we already are.
You are working weekends?
Concrete crews have been out there just about every Saturday morning. The dirt guys have worked every Saturday that they've been able to, barring rain. We've moved dirt every Saturday since they walked on site.
And I will say, this is not unique to this project. This is affecting several of my projects all over north and south in the city. It's rain. This has been, if you remember, June and August were crazy wet. And so this is unfortunately an issue that's hit every job that was sort of in this phase of coming down to the ground when dirt is stripped and
We're just a district that doesn't build schools.
Oh, I understand.
That's why. Well,
that's why we're
We just
here.
really want to.
No.
Well, that's why,
Park.
and that's why I wanted to let you know that it's not, this is not unique to your situation. It happens. Sometimes the weather happens. Unfortunately, normally the summer months are the good months, and in this year it happened to be a little bit different. So, and on the other hand, my other projects that were kind of in the same boat and about the same size of a building have about the same schedule. They're still on those projects too. They're committed to kind of meet that start of school date. So that's what I think helps when you kind of hear from multiple sides of you're hearing the same story from multiple people, or I am, I guess is what I'm saying. So you know what we've talked about in our meetings and kind of on our way to kind of keep it on track and help Dr. Simpson know and us to plan for the future as we talk about, okay, what did you say you're going to do next week? Did it happen? Okay, if it didn't happen, what are we going to do to make that time up? Or did you do another event ahead of that? So what moved? So we can track it more. Instead of tracking it to August, we track it, every 2 weeks, so we can kind of help. Is there things we can do to help, or are there things that Dr. Simpson can do to help, scheduling wise, or calling, utilities, or AT&T, those kinds of things. So we're all kind of in this together, trying to keep this thing to right the ship.
An example that I will share, Charles was having trouble getting movement from AT&T on relocation utilities. And, as luck would have it, one of the lead project manager for this region, several state region for AT&T, played high school basketball for me. And so I got a hold of him and we had a little talk, and magically we had a meeting very soon after that, and lots of cooperation from AT&T to relocate those lines. And now I won't say that we got the same level of cooperation from the rural water district, but I think we did in the end get some help with some flexibility on the supplies that they were willing to tolerate that we put in. They wanted an upgrade, and then they settled for the same material that they had in the ground, which saved us a little bit of money in the end.
Well, if we go schedule to the 17th, what's your options for school date starts?
Well, we could start, we have 3 calendars that I've kind of worked on and talked to Dr. Simpson over. The first one would be just like what we started this year. And so we could, you know, if we think that we're going to be started, we could have this calendar ready, but have another calendar set to go if we needed to start after the holiday. And what we would do there was, you guys always, the board does the days to hours. We would go to the days, to the hours, and we would add 10 minutes to each day to make sure that we got those hours. And so the school day would be 10 minutes longer. We'd still get out that Friday right there before the holiday. We would give up the 5-day Thanksgiving that the calendar committee and go to Monday, Tuesday. So there is that possibility of giving us that extra 13 days, but we wouldn't be in a school as many days, but we would make that up with the hours by going 10 minutes each day.
How many days after the 17th would that be? 10 days after? When are you talking about? What's the start date?
20. You guys, let me go get it. I got it on my desk.
Okay.
Because I'm sorry, I just want to ask if we continue on the plan, could we pull it off or not?
Well, and I think the variable that none of us can account for is what we're going to face this winter. That's why I had Doug about a month ago start looking at different options calendar-wise when I felt like we were falling behind, and to see how much flexibility we had to meet state requirements, to meet practical requirements for quality education, and to be able to start school with the new configuration. Because the reality of this is we can't just take that building on the 17th of August and on the 18th of August everybody just magically shows up and we have school. That's not going to work because of all, and Charles is aware of this too, and Sean, of all the other moving parts that we're talking about that are going to be involved in pulling this off. And so that's why I asked Charles, I said, we really need, you've got to hammer this down to where we are with our days and what we have to do. And that's when he came up with the 15 days that we've got. But
This is all 3 scenarios.
This is a rough draft. So
How many days do you have built in going forward for weather?
It varies month to month. Most months are 2, other months are 3, depending on, it's a standard schedule ODOT puts out. It's used on most jobs. It's built into the calendars of what we're supposed to allot for. So for November, December, and January, they say to allot 7. I allotted 15. Just to give us a little pad.
Now, I have a question. Is this schedule supposed to reflect all of the components in place to achieve the 8/17 finish?
Some of the past items haven't been adjusted to bring them forward in this, but by flip-flopping to where the gym is going in now rather than the metal building being where it's at.
Well, you mentioned that you've already gone in with piers and footings, and have we done the underslab roof ends?
They're in works right now.
So we don't have the slab on grade.
Not on the PNV, no. But, like I said, by flip-flopping what we're gaining on the precast panels at the gym, that offsets what we've lost on that, is how we look at it. It's hard to move things around on this program, and it gets very convoluted when I do, and I didn't want to muddle it up. The best way I can say it is, right now, if I had the metal building in place, the way it shows, and our gym back in the end of the month, we'd still be at the same end date. By switching those two around, by getting the gym up now, that still gives us the place to start finishes, and work will be completed in another location. We'll still be at the same point in the schedule, just on the other end of the building.
So rain would hurt us, but on top of that, the survey almost killed us.
The 21 days from him was a big hit. And then to compound it with the rain, yes, it has been a miserable summer.
And the irony of this is, there were a large number of days that were dry with the surveyor
We could
issues, and then when the surveyor gets it figured out, the floodgates open, and the good Lord gave us the rain. And so it really worked against each other.
So the best case scenario is you're gonna finish somewhere around August 10th or 17th.
Yes.
And that will give these guys 2 to 3 weeks to prep the school, get the furniture and everything in it. And we haven't even talked to Dee about electronics in it yet.
I think we can handle that.
Now,
Well, not only that, but then flipping our other schools, getting them to the point, because I mean, at what point do we say we're gonna be done? To be able to start to get those schools completed to where we can move, you know,
I mean-
kids into those and then open the school as well.
What I'm talking about though is if you commit now, I mean, you're almost gonna have to start after Labor Day. And we're gonna have to start doing the other 3 schools planning, and they're gonna have to do staffing and
Right.
requests and,
Right.
but what happens if we plan on Labor Day? Because we got a 2 to 3 week window and we're a week late.
Well, we've got to, the reality of this is we've got to commit to sometime in the spring, a due date. Because we can't tell the kids that you're going to be in neighborhood schools and then not put them in neighborhood schools. And so that's where we have to make a decision, because we can, one option is we can always go grade centers again next year. But the downside to that is we're going to spend a lot of a school year with a brand new building that's just sitting there.
Well, what if we say we're going to our neighborhood schools and that school down there is 4 or 5 days late? Is there a church down there that can accommodate us for 4 or 5 days?
You're talking 500 kids.
Well, I mean, you know, I've seen Dover School burn, and maybe we put, I'm just throwing things out, because what if we're 3 or 4 days late and there's nowhere
Well, Terry, to answer that question, we could add days to the end of the school year to make sure that we get our 1,080 hours. So we could actually start later than the 4th, but it's gonna push school back into the June.
But you can't just have that one little school down there start late, can we?
No.
Or could we? I mean, if we go to the 4th,
He's saying,
I'm saying that for the whole district, we could actually push it back and start on the 10th.
I know, but why would we, if we already started Labor Day and it's just this one school that's affected, couldn't we just push them back 2 or 3 days? I mean, I don't know, I'm asking you guys.
You could, that would require them going longer at the end of the year as well.
I will say too, just.
But if it's a couple of days, that's not a big deal.
I'm just
But
trying to ask.
if it's 2 weeks,
Well, yeah, I'm just meaning,
That's a big deal.
if we lose a couple of days, could they just go a couple of days longer and be cool with it?
Or could they go an additional 10
they'd have to stay in
days?
Guthrie. 'cause there's no
Yeah.
church.
I don't know if you remember back, I think it might have been 2011 maybe? Was it 2011 when it was like the wettest summer or the wettest year we've ever had in Oklahoma? Somewhere around then, I think 11 it was maybe. We had, there was a, was it 9? That long ago already? Well, Frontier Elementary in Edmond was going up, same issue. And they got down to the wire and they weren't done. And so they were done with the classroom wing, and the fire alarm was up and the sprinklers were up, but there was things that just weren't quite done in the other half of the building. And in that instance, the city said, you can operate, you can use it, excuse me, if I'm fighting a cold. So they had class and they operated in half the building while they were doing punch list items. There was a little more punch than punch list. They couldn't quite occupy the office and media center, but they kind of, they went to school, and it was about 2 or 3 weeks into the school year that they went. So it was more than just a week late in that instance. They just, and they even had the school brought their own painters in, and they were trying to finish. And it just, the weather killed it. So in that instance, that's how they handled it. They were able to use the classrooms because that they were able to have class. They catered in the food. They brought in the food from a food truck. Thank you. Only 5 weeks I've been bronchitis, but
No, I'm good, thank you.
but that did work out in that scenario. It's not ideal, but they had class. They kind of modified their day slightly, and then
Well, I think the reason I'm asking these crazy questions, I've never heard of this before, and I don't think a lot of us have, so it's like, well, we need 2 or 3 more days. Could they go late, or does the whole district have to start late?
yeah, and I think there's so many different scenarios that could happen. But I think what Sean brought up is with the fact that we've got a metal building for the classroom space, and we'll have the gym done, that time of year, there's a lot of different things you can do for food. You can have sack lunches up to a point and things like that. Where you can have school, and so that's, if we're that close, I think we can figure out a way to make it happen.
I like that.
But if we're 2.5 weeks behind or something like that, and when we might bring the calendar to you a little bit later this year to see how we're going. If we've already had one of those winters like we had 2 or 3 years ago, where we had all those snow days, and it was because we couldn't get the roads to melt down in that area. If that's the case, then we may be having a different discussion. But we won't know until we get there.
and at that point we'll know we should have the building. Once the building is dried in, the weather's not going to affect. That's the point where it's the point up until getting to the site is a weather issue, and then if it's too cold to do some work. Once the roof's on and they can work inside, then those weather days have less of an impact.
Other than laying the block.
When did we reach the point where you guys, ladies, not just guys, but when you have to say grade centers, no grade centers? I mean, when is it when you can staff and move, and when's that cut off?
I think that's probably sometime in the spring. But in all fairness to the families, we want to do it as soon as possible. so that they know where their kids are gonna go to school. But we can do that in the spring, and that was kind of the plan anyway, is to, but we've got a lot of work to do in transportation once we assign those students, because transportation will have the biggest overhaul probably in the district.
There's no way.
Because those are so many moving parts there.
I think the important part is just to make sure that we have all of our options on the table, like Terry said, so we know, so we can be very educated. I mean, if we have to get creative to get it done, I mean, because obviously, we want kids in that school next year, I mean, so.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know. But, that 10 minutes later and all that stuff, we just need to know that, how you can.
And rest assured, we have, over the last month, we've been exploring all kinds of scenarios and running them through on what does it look like if this happens? What does it look like if this happens? And can we, in fact, Doug and I kind of went back and forth on, do we have, and this is, I've got like 3, right?
I have 3, I just gave the one after.
Yeah, there are 3 different versions of this. In fact, I looked at them today. There are 3 different versions of this where we start at a different time. But this, one of the things that everyone needs to be prepared for, you know that I prefer to have a calendar committee and lots of input on that school calendar. That's not going to be as flexible this year. And my hope is that we can return to the way we've done it in following years. But there are some external factors here that are overriding some desires for a week of Thanksgiving and some stuff like that too.
So, assuming things go well with the weather, it's kind of fair to say we're planning on opening next fall, and very good possibility it'll be the day after Labor Day. That's a very fair statement at this point. But Doug's going to work wonders. We're going to get out Memorial Day by Memorial Day.
If you look at the bottom of that calendar,
I saw it.
there's still an additional 4 days that we have that we could, depending on weather. That's why we put those in there.
Yeah, because remember the calendar's affected by the weather too, on snow days.
And this is the latest start date, correct, of your 3 scenarios?
I like this one.
We could actually start on the 10th and use those 4 days, but you have no makeup snow days or anything. So
They're just coming to school, that's okay.
But as far as your
Start on
scenarios, your
the
3
4th.
would be
Don't start on the 4th.
I like it. If you have to do it, you have to do it.
But I think it's really important for everyone to be informed of where we are going into this. But
We also, I don't want to interrupt, I just want to say, as you talk about that, and Charles mentioned it, we've had this discussion as it pertains to schedule and deadline, but we emphasized, and Charles agreed and emphasized that in no way will quality be cut. We're going to make sure everything's done for the drawings and specs of the quality we expect. We're not going to turn an eye to something just because we need to make up a day or 2. So we're going to hold them accountable, and they're going to hold their guys accountable. We didn't in no way are we saying the date is more important than the building. The building's going to be here for 40, 50 years, 60 years, for a long time, and nobody's going to remember the 1 extra day or 2 extra days that kids had to be in the classroom versus out. Those people are going to forget that, but they're always going to walk by and go, "Why did that get built like that? That doesn't look right." Or that's important. Important to me, and I know it's important to Dr. Simpson and important to Charles. So I wanted to emphasize that we're not going to let that happen. And as we go through that process, as we get close to the end, and we go do our walkthroughs and do punch lists and things with Cody, that we can help on our end facilitate some of that time makeup, and that we can break up our punch list into whatever they're ready to do, we can be available. So we don't have to say, we're not going to walk that until this entire wing's done or the entire building's done. We can say, okay, we'll take an afternoon, we'll do these 3 classrooms, and we'll do these 3 and these 3, whatever Cody might need in order to wax a floor to get his guys in. We can accommodate that too, to help kind of pinch some of that time at the end.
That's because thanks, Sean, for adding that, because the thing that I've emphasized over the last month and a half is we're building a building for 40 years of use And we do not want to cut corners in order to save 2 weeks and promote 40 years of maintenance issues or problems with a building.
So we're at the yellow line, is that what you're at?
That is today's date.
That is today's date, so everything to the left of that is completed.
Not everything on there, like I said, we've made a flip-flop.
You made some
and-
flip-flops.
And some things have moved forward and some others have moved back, but when this program, when I start shoving, it still shows the shadow line of where it was, and it's really, really convoluted, and it's really, really hard to read when I did it, so I tried to make it as close to a representation, but without just muddling it up.
What left of the line that's critical is still pending to be completed?
Left of the line,
Left of the yellow line.
All of the PE and B.
yeah, the metal building isn't where it is right now, but
What number is that on here?
actually, it starts. '20, 21, and 22. 22 is kind of splitting the line.
And 16 is completed or not?
No, sorry, I missed that one. That was too far up.
Yeah, if you go.
They
up
kind of
to-
started on the other
And-
end. They intended to start on the metal building side, but ended up starting on the, is it on the precast?
Yeah, which is, I moved the precast and I think,
Number 27?
yes, ma'am.
You've started that though.
Well, it starts on Monday.
It starts on that day.
All of the footings are in place for it. All of the underslab is done in that area. Everything is ready to start standing the panels.
Even though it's not set for really November, so.
It was originally
Yeah.
for
So that's-
around Thanksgiving,
Yeah, so that's
and
good.
it's now moved up to this one.
That's good.
And I think there's some items on here that inadvertently shifted. Some of the dates aren't quite right when I moved that, and then I didn't catch that it did it. On the original schedule I brought to the meeting the other day, we had the metal building erection actually starting 20th of this month, I believe, and I don't know how this shifted, and I didn't catch it before I printed this. So,
So it is to start the 20th of October?
the metal building,
Mhm.
we're estimating between the 20th and the 25th, because we've put so much effort on the other end right now.
I gotta ask you, because you said it earlier, you made a statement that the surveyor was behind. And when he got behind, you guys, even though you could have started work, you didn't because you were being able to hold him accountable for what he did. How many days was that we just stopped?
21 days.
And after he screwed up and we fixed it, you had to stop and wait?
We're still fixing it. He didnn delay us in a sense, not showing up or was behind doing his work. His work is a 3-day process. All of the dozers and loaders and everything that's out there runs on a GPS system. No one has to sit there and measure off of a pole and figure out how much more dirt to dig. The computer does it all for him. The guy sitting in the cab is just making sure he's not running anybody over. That's literally all he's there for anymore. So what they do is we pick 4 or 5 points out on the middle of this field to where we're gonna build this, and we set points. That data is entered into a model that the GPS has, and what it does is it creates a single flat plane
Right?
that the machine can then figure out where it's at in relation to the site and either dig or fill as needed. Somewhere along the lines, don't know if it was as the guy was creating the file or as they finalized some of the math, that flat plane got turned into that. So we actually overdug where we were supposed to be higher, and we didn't dig far enough where we should have been lower. So,
But you did at some point have to stop.
oh, we
You had to stop because you said, you made the statement that you had to wait. Because
This
some
is
of
the
them-
poor part of construction. This is the legal aspect where I have to stop, give him time to verify his faults. I have to bring in third-party surveyors and independent people to come in and verify what he did was wrong, and then start the court proceedings. Because he's liable for the damage and correction. That was our biggest hit, and it's regrettable. There's nothing we could have done about it. There's no way you could even know it until
Well,
it's too
I
late.
fully understand. I just want to know if it cost us money, can we recoup it because of him? I mean, clearly his actions are gonna cost the school district money in starting school or doing this and that and the other, or, you know, is he liable to us as well?
I'm not positive on that one. That would be a question for our attorneys. I'll be more than glad to ask.
I'm just throwing it out. You guys can make that call, but if he cost us money, is his insurance gonna have to pay for it?
We would have to be able to prove damages. And so.
If we have to work on the weekends or start late to get our school started, I'm sure we could.
Well, they're already having to work on the weekends just to try to, I mean, they're doing that on their own just to try to catch up. So the damage was done, it probably indirectly to us, but directly to them because they were on a schedule. So in a roundabout way, it's all, but since they're handling it, I guess, you know, I mean, they're doing the best they can to catch up.
That's
Those GPS
one of the
things are cool.
things, the sad thing is
I know,
that's not something we'll recoup.
no,
We don't get to recoup
you can't get back time.
what we guess we're gonna spend over the next year in overtime and
Mhm.
weekend work and holidays and triple time on Sundays. I
Right.
can't go after.
I was just
I'm
getting
on
to
my
the
own.
point, if we're gonna be out money, is he responsible to us?
I mean, that's a question I'll more than gladly ask.
I just- That's all right.
I build buildings, I don't do the legal side. So
Well, thank you very much for what you have been doing.
Where we had to dig out, where we dug out more than we went back in and packed it in.
Mhm.
I mean, will
Yes.
are we okay as far as foundation wise?
You have as good or better of a foundation than you would have had. Because what we took out in the majority of the places was loose sandy soils or soft sandstone. Those things move more than the good fill dirt we used. So you have as good or better of a foundation.
And all of
than you had
that,
up front.
when they fill, they have to do it in lifts. And then every time they do a lift, they have to have the testing company, you have a third-party testing company that comes out and does tests to verify that the moisture is correct and the soil density is correct, and they proof roll it, make sure it's not pumping, and they do that every lift. They have to do a
Every
lift and
inch.
test, do a lift and test, do a lift and test. So, give the insurance, it's not just somebody it's not the guys in the trucks that say it's good, it's, you have somebody else come in and do that every lift. And that happens on every part of the building, on
Whether-
footings and foundations and concrete tests and grout and mortar and steel, so you have that assurance that somebody's watching out for you, a third party.
We have anything else for Charles? Sean's gonna hang around for the third part of this move. Okay. Charles, thanks.
7 days. That's good.
No problem.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, we can.
This is cool. We
Take a
might-
picture.
Well, we might have everything to look at. This helps.
His pictures are
She
gonna be
understands
fine.
it better than anybody.
Raymond,
But-
wacky
Or Mike.
surveyor that-
You like it.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I appreciate you very much.
We appreciate it.